his art wasn't his life was his art, as if they're around, you know, and that's where he was, you know. So there wasn't a thing where he took he clocked out in the meter and said, I finished my painting, and now I'm going to switch off. Robert was always switched on. But that, like Andy says, encompasses all aspects of life. If it was watching a television series, Robert could be hooked like the rest of us on something that was on television, but he was always somehow. It was all to do with inquiry, visual inquiry, and trying to make his life as interesting as possible and ask questions, which I think is what we all do, but Robert did it on a really, really intense level.
He used to say that he was determined to have as much fun as he possibly could.
Yeah.
And I think that was...
Well, he did, really.
He did, he absolutely did.
He had a lot of fun.
Yes.
I don't think he allowed himself to be down. I mean, he would obviously get down, obviously have moments where things would go wrong.
I never saw him...
But he never kind of let it... He was always like optimistic, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
Amazingly so.
But I think that that made him very good company, because he was... perhaps not optimistic is not quite the right word, because he wanted to make life as rich an experience as possible, as he repeatedly said.
But I think haunts the mind more than the sheer fact of the thing. I think Robert was so much in love with life itself that he was always, you know. But then like Wolf was saying about the windows in the studio. One period, the Tramps are smashing the windows every day, sleep in their winter.
Yes.
And Wolf had come down with Robert when he was living with Robert. And of course Robert would be a little bit obviously upset to find your windows smashed off the studio. But then Wolf said he managed to get an insurance policy, so they were always fixed until it stopped. But I never found Robert at that period ever kind of upset. Or one period I saw Robert a little bit upset was when his library, the church now, had a leak in it. And Robert was on the phone. There's a phone number on my painting he did of me, the last one, in the last series of Addictive Behaviour, and that was the roofer's phone number from Anna. And he was phoning up the guy saying, the books. And there's one time I saw a little bit of terror in his face. But that was pretty, but Robert was always, that was lovely, wasn't it? It was always like the feeling of going into a treasure chest, like in Aladdin's cave, and opening a door of the studio was, and the thing would just, these jewels would just submerge you in it. And Plymouth became like going to see an amazing film, that kind of a film that kind of haunts your mind, or full of excitement, but partly Indiana Jones and partly like some great art house classic. And when Robert went, Plymouth was seagulls and wind and certain sounds that it always was, but it lacked this Aladdin's cave, just a pretty town, where before it was this had this rich kind of menacing thing that was like, you knew when you walked in, the bell went off, you walked up these creaky stairs, and it was wow, you know. And I think everyone experienced that walking into his studio who lived in Plymouth. Could not forget that experience. Very different to going to a normal artist studio in the East End of London, which is a much more normal experience. Robert did create a universe in his studio, and it's amazing how many people walked through those doors and were painted. The full scope of Robert's work is still at early stages. Talking from an art history point of view, even trying to document every painting painted is just impossible. Every week there's something in auction coming up that has been forgotten about, and that's going to keep happening and for years to come.